And good evening once again, everybody. Welcome back to Hoops HD's preseason podcast. This evening, this is our preseason Big 12 podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, along with Matt Sikowski, John Stalika, Joby Fortson, and David Griggs. And David, this is actually the second time we've recorded the Big 12 podcast because apparently, while we were recording the first one, you started talking about some other team when we were discussing Texas and decided to delete the whole thing.
What happened was you had messed my notes up, and I had made the comment about all the players Texas had returning, all the starters. Well, Texas, you didn't let me finish my thought. I meant Texas will have a lot of returning starters going into their second game.
Well David,
I
didn't merit deleting the entire podcast.
Well, you were wrong. Like, you gave me the wrong notes. It wasn't my fault.
Are these the same notes that said Cincinnati and Houston were going to be joining the Big 12?
No, it's the same notes that said Colorado was in the conference.
Oh, well. Anyhow, we do want to talk about the Big 12 here, and we want to start by discussing what happened last year in the Big 12, where during the regular season, it was the best conference in the country. It looked to be. 7 out of 10 teams making the NCAA tournament, all wearing white in the first round, being top 8 seeds. And then we turn around in the NCAA tournament, and every single one of those teams, other than Iowa State, who lost to 1 seed Virginia, was wearing white in the game that they lost. That does include Oklahoma as a 2 seed playing Villanova as a 2 seed in the Final Four, but it was an upset loss for 6 out of the 7 teams when they fell out of the tournament. And Joby, let me start with you. And the question is, what was the Big 12 last year? Was it the team the conference we saw in the regular season, or the conference we saw in the NCAA tournament?
I've got to say that it's probably the postseason. I know that not everybody agrees with that stance, but the reason why is
it's wrong.
It's because it's simple math. They had some good out of conference wins, but because they are very fortunate, and I give them credit for this, they have a full round robin schedule and no weak teams. So no RPI poison, no Boston College sitting at the bottom, no DePaul sitting at the bottom. You all of a sudden have a situation where you build up these really strong RPIs, which then your RPI might not help you, but you beating all of a sudden an average team in your conference is Texas Tech in the 20s. Then all of a sudden you pile up these really good wins, these really great resumes, and it builds upon itself, and then it builds upon itself again and again. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That happened in the Big 12. There were several teams overseeded. We'll talk about it a little bit. True, Oklahoma deservingly made the Final Four. They were a great team, and Kansas was deserving of their 1 seed, especially with their out-of-conference schedule and performance. But for the most part, they were not deserving of the seeds that they received.
Matt, do you agree with him that the Big 12 was just overseeded last year and just wasn't as good of a conference as we thought they were during the regular season?
I think it was a very good league. I think it probably got a little more attention. I'd actually might bring this argument back up when we do the Pac-12 preview, but I think it was a good, Texas Tech probably not an 8 seed, and that Baylor maybe wasn't a 5 seed. So, a little bit, it was still a good league, and I don't think any of their losses were humiliating. I mean, most of them were pretty close, and they had 5-12, 6-11, 8-9 games. You have losses like that.
Well, for a team like Baylor, it's also started to become more of a trend because 2 years ago they also had a sizable lead against Georgia State and lost that one. And last year they end up losing to Yale in round 1. So, I mean, they're going to have, as we discuss later, a hell of a time just trying to get back into the NCAAs this year while they try to reload.
Well, let's turn to this season. And David, UCLA from 1967 to 1979 won 13 straight Pac-10 and now Pac-12 tournament regular season championships. I'm sorry. Kansas, if they win the regular season championship in the Big 12 this year, will tie that record. How good is this Kansas team? Can they do that?
Oh yeah, they absolutely can because they're really good, and no one else in the league really is. And I'm starting to, I'm starting to buy into Kansas as a program. I think Bill Self has really got it going on there. I'm starting to think they're pretty good.
They're starting to think they're pretty good. Well,
Yeah.
Matt, there are 18 regular season games in the Big 12 regular season. How many of them do you think Kansas wins?
I will say 17, but it would not stun me if it's all 18.
Okay, you think they're that good, despite the fact you don't have Perry Ellis or Wayne Selden anymore.
I think, yeah, you have in Wade Selden, you've upgraded with Josh Jackson. And while Carlton Bragg won't quite be what Perry Ellis was, he'll be at like 85, 90% of that. And that with the rest of their roster. And then one player we failed to mention in our initial time, but I think actually takes a nice step up is Svi Mikhailuk.
Joby, do you agree that this is a Kansas team that has a shot to run the table?
They could easily run the table. This is, and that's an
Easily.
indictment a little bit on the rest of the Big 12 to a degree, but it also is saying how good they are. I mean, they might have they have 2 point guards who'd start almost anywhere else in the country. And that's saying something. I mean, in this era of needing to find floor generals, they have 2. I mean, they have such great depth with Graham, et cetera. And I like the Mikhailuk call that Matt just pointed out that he is going to probably break out a little bit this year. They're the real deal, and they're going to run roughshod over the Big 12.
Well, Joby, let me ask you the following question: If they run through the Big 12 undefeated, they're probably going to be a 1 seed there. I don't think there's any way that would be avoided.
Of course, especially with the strong out of conference schedule.
But how deep do you think the team goes? Are they Final Four? Are they your national champion?
I don't like them for the national champion just because I like a lot of other teams. At the top end, we've already done our ACC podcast. Duke obviously pops open, but we'll get to see Kansas against some of these high level teams like Kentucky, etc. They're Final Four. They wouldn't be my pick to win, but if they won, it certainly wouldn't blow me over. I think they are. When we get to the point of preseason Final Fours, I think I'm pretty confident in putting them in that category.
And John, you're our schedule guru here. If we're talking about the chance that Kansas runs the table in conference, how about out of conference? Do they have a shot to run the table there as well, or do they have a few traps in there?
Oh, there's going to be more than a few traps when you consider they start their season in Hawaii against Indiana, and then they also play Duke in Madison Square Garden, which is almost as good as a road game. But other games I'm looking at,
as good as a national championship game,
Yeah.
quite honestly.
Right? Yeah.
but other games I'm looking at for Kansas would include UNLV and also Kentucky. But as far as going to the Big 12 undefeated, I don't think they're going to go through all the alligator pits without stumbling at least once against either an Iowa State, a Texas, or a West Virginia.
Yeah, these are some snake pits.
Alligator pits.
Or whatever you want to call it. Like, I mean, these are teams that win a high percentage of games at home. And even though Kansas is the better team, I don't see them winning all of those games when you're playing against teams in hostile environments, when they are familiar with the venue. It's just so hard to win on the road in college basketball. I don't see Kansas winning all of it. And you got to remember, like a team like Texas, who brings back, I think, I mean, they won a lot of games last year, and they're bringing back a lot of contributing players and starters. So you got to pay attention to that.
No
too.
starters.
What?
No starters.
Te-
Again, no starters, David, still,
What?
just like last time.
Oh. What? Chad, start it over.
We-
Chad,
Well,
start it over.
let's go ahead and talk
No, we
about a couple
can't.
teams below Kansas, and let's talk a little bit about this Texas team. And Matt, let me send it over to you here on this Texas team. We know no starters are back, but
What?
is that going to really matter for this Texas team this year?
Not a huge issue in that, you have 3 very good sophomores coming back in Kerwin Roach, Eric Davis, and Tevin Mack, who I think will have a very much better sophomore year. And then a loaded recruiting class, Andrew Jones, Jacob Young, Jared Allen, James Banks. And that combining of some guys who've already got experience with Shaka with this new group is what you have. You have a very good team, probably a year away, and hoping that, say, 5 or 6 of these guys return. A year from now, could I think really be a threat on the national stage. But we'll still be like second in the Big 12, I think. And who knows? They might give Kansas the one loss I gave them.
Joby, do you think Texas is a solid NCAA tournament team then?
Without a doubt, they're my number 2 in the conference. I would agree with what Matt was saying. The sophomores had to sit behind those guys who left, David, but they were very good. Davis is one I am particularly like. Allen's the real deal. He is going to make he's that sort of freshman that comes in. And I made this reference. Can he be Tyler Ennis? I think he can. He's going to really hit the ground running and will propel Texas, which even with all the losses is a deep team. It's a pretty darn deep team. They're going to be able to play havoc.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. They've got a deep team.
And John, with Texas in terms of schedule, I'm looking at their schedule right now, and while they don't have a ton of name brands other than Michigan and Georgia on their non-conference, they've got some teams from the under-the-radar conferences that will be tough. They're playing Texas Arlington. They're playing Long Beach. They're playing UAB this season. Do you think that that's going to be a factor here?
They also played Arlington last year, so this seems to be a fixture game of sorts for Texas right here. I mean, as far as the Legends Classic that I believe may also be played in Brooklyn, they play Northwestern, and then they'll play either Notre Dame or Colorado. But there are also going to be some other games against Michigan, Arkansas, and Georgia that aren't going to be the easiest ones to win away from home either.
That's a good schedule.
That's Shaka.
Yeah. And he does do something which I don't mind when you've got no starters returning. Starts off the season with 3 cupcakes here in Incarnate Word, Louisiana Monroe, and Eastern Washington before that Legends Classic. I think that gives you a chance to build up going into the season.
And by then they'll have their starters.
But David, other than Texas, is there somebody else that you're looking at the top of the Big 12 here?
Texas is probably the team that I like the best. Iowa State, although I think depth for them is going to be an issue, but I like them at least to make the tournament. I don't know. I don't think they're going to challenge. I certainly don't think they're going to challenge Kansas or Texas, but I think they're inside the bubble.
See, I like this Iowa State team a lot, and I know maybe I'm focusing more on the starters and not on the bench depth is maybe the problem here, but you got Monte Morris, you got Nazmi Trulong, Matt Thomas, Deontay Burton. Matt, I think you disagreed with me, though, a bit.
Oh, yeah, because I think that's basically their team, and we didn't mention the center, and I think just those guys play 35 minutes a night. Maybe they get off to a good start, like 11-2 at non-conference, and maybe start out, say, 6-3 in the first part of Big 12 play. But I think as the year goes on, as they wear down, and then can Monte Morris assume the lead scorer, lead distributor, all that mantle? I can see maybe he'll score more points, but it won't be in quite as efficient of a manner as the rest of his career. And all in all, I just see a team that will end up winning 20-ish games and then be right in the discussion of the last few teams that are out.
Will this be another game that Cincinnati loses in heartbreak fashion? Because I think this was one of them last year, if you include Butler, UConn, and St. Joe's, but that's for another show.
I think, John, talking about Iowa State, one of the problems is you being our schedule guy. Maybe you can read off some of these games that they are playing this year. I'm just hold my nose.
I mean, sure, the start is going to be a little bit ugly if you just focus on Savannah State, Mount St. Mary's, and Citadel. But like the Cincinnati game I mentioned, they do have a decent exempt tournament where forget Indiana State, but there's Miami, Stanford. Never mind. I'm just going to focus on Iowa and Vanderbilt and leave it at that.
And I guess they got Drake.
And you skipped over Drake and Mississippi Valley State in Denver as well.
Drake's a fixture. Like they're playing,
That's in Des Moines, so
Joby, we haven't discussed West Virginia. Are they a factor here in the battle for second place at least?
Yeah, press Virginia is. I think they're one of these other teams that's a pretty reliable tournament team here. Javon Carter is is a big key for them. I saw firsthand when Huggins pulled him against Virginia last year, and it was a pretty tight, close to tie ball game, and then Carter did a bonehead play. Huggins pulled him just to kind of show that, hey, get your head in the game. It completely took their team off the rails. I think when you combine, but then by the same token, Williams, the loss of Williams, he's the one who actually stirred the drink on the inside. So will Carter have a buddy inside to help him? The overall skill set, though, of West Virginia, I think, will be able to overcome the loss of Williams, but they'll be a solid team.
So in other words, he was Ray Butcher from Hoosiers.
Yeah. Yes.
David, do you agree about West Virginia that this is a solid team on near the top of the Big 12 standings?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I think Kansas is at the top, and the second place team is nowhere near the top. So, but yeah, I think they're in the top half of it, and
Okay.
I think they're an NCAA tournament contender for all the reasons you said. And this is also a team that seems to always do a little bit better than what we're expecting.
David, who's that sitting next to you?
Galen's cousin.
Oh yeah, they need to get out of here, whoever it is.
Yeah. Well, David chases away his unwanted guess. Matt, Baylor no longer has Torian Prince, no longer has Rico Gathers, but they do have a few pieces. Is Scott True going to have this team back in the field again?
Yes, he will. And actually, they would be my pick for third in the Big 12. And I like Jonathan Motley. I think steps right into that Torian Prince role. And then I think other guys, Mario LeCompte coming in, the Miami transfer, gives a perimeter shooter, that kind of lead guard he's been working with that can set up others, hits an open shot, and will allow his talent at the 2 and 3 with guys like Ish Wainwright, King McClure, Alaric Freeman, those guys who might take a little more of the shots, but LeCompte can hit the open perimeter jumper, get set up his teammates when needed, and then also, we'll get it to Motley down low to make sure the big man's happy and active on both ends.
Yeah, and Joby, beyond these teams, the one team we have not yet discussed was a team that played in the Final Four last year, the Oklahoma Sooners. Why haven't we discussed them yet? We're talking about the top team.
You have a guy named Buddy Hield. He's really good. Oh, wait a minute, he's gone. I love the inside out of Spang. No.
Cousins.
Oh, but you know what? And Latin's a dead language as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know how good they'll actually be. So
what you're saying is
ready for the fall, but you know what? It was a fun run. I picked them for the Final Four last year preseason. I was proven correct, and I'll just take my winnings and leave the table.
Well, you were so good on your Oklahoma pick last year. Where are you picking Oklahoma to be this year?
Yeah, I think they might even miss the NIT this year. It's not going to be that hard. I mean, they just don't have the depth. I mean, they had, and Buddy Hield was. I mean, let's all bask in the glow of what was one of the great college basketball players I've seen.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that maybe they lost quite a bit. They might not be as good.
And John, they've got a tough road here with games like Wisconsin, Wichita State, and Florida in non-conference, as well as Auburn, who is one of the top teams in the SEC.
And that's on the back end of the schedule. I mean, at least their exempt tournament, they at least have somewhat of an easier road, starting with Tulane and either Arizona State or a Northern Iowa team that's reloading. But I don't think you want to be facing Clemson or Xavier on the other side of the bracket.
I think that would be Xavier there if you're making the championship game over Clemson. Yeah. But and we will have a preseason a podcast coming up at some point for all those exempt tournaments.
We hope you'll be able to hear it and watch it.
But let's go on. There are 3 new coaches in the Big 12 this year. And Matt, one of them is at Texas Tech, where Chris Beard comes in from both Arkansas Little Rock and UNLV simultaneously.
That's awesome.
And this is actually one of the rare guys who might say Texas Tech is his dream job. He was a longtime assistant there under Bobby and Pat Knight. Loves the Lubbock area. God bless the soul who does decide that. So, and I think it actually do a decent job. And it wouldn't surprise me if say they get a tournament slot instead of Iowa State or West Virginia. I think they'll be right in that hunt for it. And if he gets all of Tubby's guys back, and if a couple of the JUCO guys he brought in can hit, that might be where Iowa State or West Virginia, one of them, fall off and be the 4th, 5th Big 12 tournament team.
Well, not just JUCO guys. He brought in a kid from Quinnipiac, a kid from Arkansas State. So he's got a lot of transfers coming in here. But David, do you think that Texas Tech could actually be a tournament team in Chris Beard's first year, or return to the tournament, I guess?
I think it's kind of a long shot. I mean, I like him. I like the hire. I think that it's a good move, and I think he'll do really well there. I just don't think they get in this year.
We need Lee Del Vecchio's input if we're going to be talking about Quinnipiac transfers, though.
Joby, another new coach in the Big 12 is at Oklahoma State, where Brad Underwood comes in over from Stephen F. Austin. Has an undersized lineup, which is the type of team that he dealt with at SFA.
Yeah.
Has Phil Forte healthy, has Juwan Evans, who was freshman of the year in the conference last year.
Yeah, and that's the thing is he has a guard tandem that could be one of the, I mean, it's not Kansas, because, but at least the second best in the conference. Juwan Evans is the real deal. Having missed last year, they've had, they've been able to replenish there. And as you point out, Underwood, this is the type of team he plays with. I think they're going to be very competitive. A lot of people are pinging them to be last. I don't see that.
No
out of
TCUs in the league.
Yeah.
Well,
we're not talking NCAA tournament, but I think they're going to be competitive and shoot their way into some games.
What's his record against top 200 teams? I mean, can we?
It's a grand total of 2-2.
Is it really? Wow. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, he's had 2 fantastic, very improbable, at least I thought they were, NCAA tournament wins. After getting blasted by Baylor, blasted by UAB, anybody that was an NIT caliber team or better seemed to blast them last year until the NCAA tournament. But, yeah, SFA had some good runs. He is a very good coach. I thought it was a really good hire for Oklahoma State, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time.
Well, Brad Underwood at SFA went 59-1 over the last 3 years against Southland teams. He did start off the season with Central Arkansas and New Orleans early. Also scheduled Texas A&M Corpus Christi in December. So there's 3 more wins for him at least.
You're forgetting Campbell, Chad.
Well, Campbell wasn't in the Southland, John.
Yeah,
but they do start the season with Campbell, then they get Central Arkansas and New Orleans. John, the third new head coach here is over at TCU with Jamie Dixon. Was this the right move by Dixon?
Well, you could wonder if his seat was starting to get warm in Pittsburgh like Kevin Stallings was over at Vanderbilt, so he probably picked the right time to exit stage right. The only problem is TCU, I don't think they've been to any NCAA tournament since Billy Tubbs left in the late 90s. So I would have to go back to 1998 is the last time the Horned Frogs actually made the field.
Well, Matt, do you have a prognostication as to how long it's going to take Jamie Dixon, or if he even can turn this program around?
Oh, I think he does, and I'll say 3 years. Like his 3rd year, he gets him in the tournament. Part of that he has... Yeah, that's what he's got a real good kid coming in this year, Jalen Fisher, that thanks to new assistant Ryan Miller brought him from UNLV to TCU. Has a good class coming in this year, RJ Nemhard, and then Kevin Samuel down low, and then are the favorites for 5-star forward Jared Vanderbilt. If those 3 come in, and then think of he has another 4-star kid already committed in 2018, 1 or 2 more, I think he's building a roster. They actually, for a team, they hadn't been really committed to winning and languished in the WAC, languished in Conference USA, but getting into the Big 12 here, they renovated their arena, poured money, spent money on getting a big-time alumnus in Jamie Dixon, and as you see, I think the rest of the Big 12 is struggling with recruiting a little bit, save for Kansas and Texas. So I think in a few years, you're going to see TCU possibly in the top half.
All right. David, there's one team we have not yet discussed, and we just discussed 3 teams that have new head coaches. This is the team that I believe needs a new head coach.
And you're talking about the K-State Wildcats.
We're talking about the K-State Wildcats. I want to throw a few numbers out here at you.
You can.
They were ranked 226th in the nation. They were ranked 332nd in the nation in three-point percentage last year. Woefully bad on offense.
I mean, it's a small hoop, but I mean, like, good God.
These are numbers that they're up there. They're competing with teams with the MEAC and the SWAC. They're not competing with Big 12 teams with these types of numbers.
No, and even MEAC and SWAC teams can probably shoot better than that. That is not hitting your shot. Yeah, I mean, K-State was in a very healthy spot when he took them over. Frank Martin left them in great shape.
And Bob Huggins.
Yeah, and as did Bob Huggins, who was there for the season before Frank Martin. So, they were a tournament caliber team. They were probably top 25 caliber. And he made a couple tournaments, but he has basically digressed, I think it's safe to say. I think they continue to digress, and they're going to finish, I think, either 9th or 10th this year.
Joby, is this his last year?
Yeah, and they just don't have the horses. It's been, as David pointed out, a slow decline. And remember, Kansas State was the last team to tie Kansas for the regular. We talk about Kansas hasn't won all their titles untied in this 13-year stretch. Kansas State tied for one, and that might have gotten the hopes up in Manhattan. And it's just a tough place to get people to come to if you're not hiring their dad as a coach.
Matt, is there anything else with this K-State team that do you think they're the last place team this year, or is that TCU?
I'd say TCU probably this year. I'd have K-State in the 8-ish range in that the Weber team, they'll play pretty decent defense and offense just because I think they're a good rebounding team. They'll get some second chances because God knows they'll miss the first shot often enough. But I think not enough outside scoring and probably enough firepower to where I think they're going to lose a lot of games like 70-65.
Yeah, here's a few other numbers. 234th in the nation in scoring, 211th in the nation in free throw percentage. I mean, they can't even hit the basket when nobody else is when no one's defending them. So, something's got to change there in K-State. But on that note, I want to run through each of you, have your predictions as to how many teams from the Big 12 are going to make the tournament. I think we're probably all going to agree that Kansas is going to win the conference this year, but who's the second place team is and how many other teams are making the field. And
I don't think it's Baylor.
Let's start with you.
I think
Joey.
Yeah, sorry. Kansas, Texas second, 3 teams. That's it. West Virginia, and Texas being those 2.
Only 3 from the.
Only 3.
Wow, that's a very low number. Matt, do you agree with him?
No, I think I agree with the 1, 2, but no, I'm going to say 5. But I will say my last 2, West Virginia and Iowa State, are just going to be on the right side of the bubble, and I think at least one of them are going to Dayton.
End up in Dayton. Okay, John, what do you think?
I'm going to say beyond Kansas, I'll say Texas, West Virginia, Iowa State will get in, and I'll have Oklahoma State as my 5th and wild card to get into the NCAA tournament out of the Big 12 this year.
So you don't like Baylor to make the field?
Not this year, not when you're reloading.
All right, David.
If Okie State makes the NCAA tournament, like I'll go from thinking Brad Underwood is good to absolutely fantastic. But anyway, I like Kansas to win it. I like this Texas team with all of the contributing players that they have coming back, starters or not. Iowa State, who I think you like. I like Baylor. I really do. I like their pieces, and I think that by the time they get into conference play, they'll be gelled. This is a team that typically does better than expected when they're not expected to be good. So I think those 4 get in, with West Virginia having a chance to get in. I don't think anybody else after 5th place even makes the NIT, though.
I hate agreeing with David, but I do agree with him. I think it is a five team league. Kansas, Iowa State, West Virginia, Baylor, Texas. But I agree that there is a real sharp drop off after those 5, and that's why I think it's a 5-team league. I don't see an NIT team unless Oklahoma State does what John thinks they're going to do, and I'm not convinced that Brad Underwood in his first season is going to get that done at Okie State.
I'll still take Brad Underwood in season 1 over season end with Travis Ford.
But on that note, on behalf of myself, Chad Sherwood, Matt Zakowski, John Salika, Joby Fortson, David Griggs, and all of these starting players that are returning from the Texas Longhorns, we want to thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
You can't just say things like that. Don't turn it off. Don't